At 58, the man who once seemed indestructible is learning that strength has a price. Jason Statham, the embodiment of grit, discipline, and silent intensity, stands today as one of Hollywood's most enduring icons. But behind every punch, every chase, and every perfectly timed stare lies a story that is not of glamour, but of pain. A story of a man who fought every day, not just for fame, but for dignity. We know him as the invincible action star, the bald-headed, sharp-jawed Brit who could leap off skyscrapers, trade blows with giants, and walk away unscathed. Yet the truth is far more human. Jason Statham's life has been a slow-burning tragedy, not in a single cataclysmic fall, but in the quiet accumulation of loss, exhaustion, and sacrifice that no camera ever captured. Long before the fame, before the fast cars and choreographed chaos, Jason grew up in the small, coal-stained town of Shirebrook in Derbyshire, England. The son of a singer and a street seller, he learned early that life didn't hand out favors. His father, Barry, hustled daily, peddling cheap jewelry, trinkets, anything that might bring a few coins home. His mother, Eileen, carried the warmth of an old soul, but the worry of bills that never stopped. Jason would later say that watching his father taught him everything he needed to know about survival. Never complain, never expect, just move. He wasn't the strongest kid, but he was determined. His escape came in the form of water. Diving became his first love, a rare purity in a world of struggle. At the Crystal Palace National Sports Center, he found a discipline that mirrored his father's grit. A relentless focus on precision and repetition. Hours spent perfecting the art of falling gracefully through air. The pool became a sanctuary, a place where his will mattered more than his wallet. For over a decade, he trained relentlessly, representing England in the Commonwealth Games, narrowly missing a shot at the Olympics. Each defeat built him harder. But when the cheers faded and the medals stopped coming, reality hit. Athletic glory didn't pay rent. He found himself back on the streets of London, hawking knockoff perfume and fake watches. Standing in freezing weather, shouting at strangers, he felt the world's indifference like a knife. Yet even there, in the humiliation of selling to people who barely looked at him, he learned something that would shape his screen presence forever. Eye contact, confidence, the ability to look anyone in the eye and never flinch. The same defiant stare that would later become his trademark on screen was born there, in the cold, while trying to sell cheap goods to survive. Then, fate did what it always does when preparation finally meets chance. A modeling scout spotted him. His rugged, raw, unpolished look stood out in a world of carefully crafted beauty. He started modeling for brands like French Connection and Tommy Hilfiger. But the money wasn't the miracle people think it was. Modeling paid the bills, but it wasn't passion. It was another hustle. Then one day, Guy Ritchie walked into his life. Ritchie, preparing to shoot Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, saw something real in Jason. That unmistakable authenticity that couldn't be taught. He wasn't an actor, but he knew how to perform for survival. Ritchie cast him not for skill, but for truth. Jason's first scenes were unscripted. Ritchie had him improvise, playing a con man selling stolen jewelry to passers-by. Something he'd done hundreds of times in real life. It was electric. Audiences didn't see an actor. They saw a man who'd lived the hustle. Lock, Stock exploded, Snatch followed, and the world suddenly wanted to know who this mysterious, tightly wound Brit was. Hollywood called, and for a brief moment, it seemed the boy from Shirebrook had escaped gravity. But Jason didn't want to be another face. He refused to fake it. When the transporter came, he insisted on doing his own stunts, not out of pride, but because authenticity was his only language. He fought underwater for minutes, drove cars through explosions, bruised and bled for scenes others would have passed to a double. The pain became his proof. In the early 2000s, he redefined the modern action hero. No superpowers, no gadgets, just muscle, focus, and control. Yet the deeper he dived into this persona, the more it consumed him. Behind the stoic facade, the injuries piled up. A dislocated shoulder during Transporter 2, fractured ribs on Crank, cuts that needed stitches hidden under the wardrobe. He laughed it off publicly, but privately, his body began to rebel. Nights became restless, his back screamed from years of overtraining, and silence became his only comfort. When he wasn't filming, he trained, perhaps out of fear that stopping would mean collapsing. Hollywood embraced him, but it also boxed him in. The more he played indestructible men, the less space there was for the human inside him. Movies like The Bank Job and Revolver tried to show depth, but critics were harsh, studios impatient. He was labeled typecast. Beneath the stoic smile, Jason felt the sting of being both celebrated and dismissed. His loyalty to physical performance, his refusal to play the Hollywood game, made him respected by peers but misunderstood by the industry. He wasn't the party-going celebrity. He was the man who went home early, trained in silence, and woke before dawn. Fame never changed his habits. It just magnified his loneliness. But loneliness wasn't new. His early relationships bore the weight of his rising fame. Kelly Brook was his first great love, fiery, devoted, and full of laughter. They met before the fame fully hit, when Jason was still hungry and grounded. She believed in him, but Hollywood pulled them apart. Her modeling career soared as his movie roles demanded months away. The tabloids feasted on their split, portraying him as distant, emotionless. He never responded publicly, but those close to him say he was crushed. He'd lost the one person who knew him before the world did. After Kelly came Sophie Monk, lighthearted, spontaneous, funny. Their chemistry was real, but their worlds were opposite. Jason was private, structured, almost monk-like in his discipline. Sophie lived for the moment. Within a year, the spark faded. Then came Alex Zossman, a quieter chapter. She was calm, supportive, a soft voice in a storm. They spent several years together, but even that ended when work devoured him again. Fame rewards success, not balance. It was around this time Jason realized something profound. Every time his career rose, his personal life cracked. He had become the very thing he portrayed on screen. The lone warrior, capable of surviving anything except peace. Everyone wanted the actor, he once confided. No one saw the man. And then came Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. They met at a party in 2010, him at 43, her barely 23. Many dismissed it as another Hollywood fling, but it became the opposite. Rosie understood his silences, his structure, his need for calm. Their connection wasn't built on drama, but on quiet loyalty. She grounded him, and for the first time, Jason allowed himself to slow down. They married in private, welcomed a son, Jack, and later a daughter, Isabella. Fatherhood rewired him. He once chased perfection in every move. Now he found beauty in imperfection, in tiny fingers, sleepy laughter, quiet mornings. Yet even that joy carried guilt. He missed birthdays while shooting, came home limping, his body breaking faster than it healed. He'd look at his children and feel a deep, unspoken fear that one wrong stunt could take him from them forever. He rarely talks about it, but those around him say he's haunted by that thought. "Privacy is our peace," he told a journalist once, his voice steady but tired. He meant it. Behind the action star is a man who just wants stillness, but stillness doesn't erase memory. In 2011, tragedy struck on the set of The Expendables 2. During a stunt gone wrong, a truck crashed into the water, killing stuntman Kun Liu. Jason, who had been in a similar vehicle earlier that day, dove in to help but could not save him. The guilt consumed him. For months he avoided interviews, spending long stretches in silence. Friends say he carried that weight quietly, visiting Liu's family privately, refusing to speak publicly out of respect. Every film since then has been a silent tribute to that day, the reminder that every action has a cost. And then came Paul Walker's death in 2013. Paul wasn't just a colleague from the Fast and Furious franchise, he was a kindred soul. They bonded over cars, adrenaline, and shared discipline. When news broke that Paul had died in a car crash, Jason was reportedly filming overseas. He locked himself in his trailer for hours. At the next press event, when asked, he simply said, "You don't move on from a man like Paul. You just carry his light." Those who know him say that since then, every risky scene carries Paul's ghost in his mind, a constant whisper to do it safer, smarter. But Jason never truly slowed down. For him, movement was survival. Even now, his mornings begin before sunrise, training alone in a private gym. His body, though, is no longer the weapon it once was. Doctors have warned him repeatedly about chronic spinal compression, nerve damage, and degenerative discs from years of abuse. The pain never leaves. Some days, his legs go numb. Other days, he can't sleep from the throbbing. Still, he shows up on set, wraps his hands, and fights through it. Because deep down, he fears that if he stops, he'll lose himself completely. He once told a friend, "Every hit you see on camera is a memory written in bone." It wasn't a metaphor, it was a confession. His spine bears the weight of decades. His knuckles never fully healed. Even his jaw, famously clenched in every role, has nerve damage from an old stunt gone wrong. He is a man made of scar tissue, held together by will. Today, at 58, Jason Statham lives mostly away from Hollywood's chaos. He prefers the quiet rhythm of London, occasional visits to LA for work, and long stretches at home with Rosie and their kids. He no longer chases every blockbuster. He chooses projects that mean something. He reads more, spends hours fixing cars, cooks simple meals. But when he sits alone, sometimes watching the rain hit the glass, the same kind of rain that fell over his boyhood town, there's a haunting stillness in his eyes. It's the look of a man who achieved everything he dreamed of and realized that every victory came at the cost of something he could never replace. He rarely grants interviews now. When he does, he avoids personal questions, turning every answer toward gratitude, a polite deflection from pain. Yet between the lines, his sadness lingers. His fans still see the indestructible hero, but those closest to him know he's fighting a quieter war. Against time, against injury, against the loneliness of being misunderstood. He often reflects on his early days, the dives, the streets, the hustles. "I didn't come this far to complain," he once said. And he doesn't. But in those words lies a lifetime of exhaustion. The tragedy of Jason Statham isn't a single heartbreak or accident. It's the cumulative erosion of a man who gave everything to stay strong, until even his strength became a burden. For all his fame, Jason never sought adoration. He sought respect. And that, perhaps, is his greatest heartbreak. Realizing that the world applauds his power but rarely recognizes his pain. He made a career out of being untouchable. Yet what made him human were the things he never showed. The quiet regret, the sleepless nights, the ache in his back after every film, the fear of being forgotten when he finally stops fighting. He once said in an interview, "I'm not afraid of getting old. I'm afraid of standing still. But time has its own rules." The man who outran everything, failure, poverty, heartbreak, can't outrun his own body. His greatest battles now happen off camera, between the man who still wants to push forward and the one who just wants to rest. As the lights fade and the cameras go silent, what remains is not Jason Statham, the action hero, but Jason, the man from Shirebrook, the diver who never gave up, the son who sold trinkets in the cold, the father who finally learned what peace feels like. His story isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. And persistence always comes with pain. He's spoken about legacy only once. "If my kids remember me as someone who tried, that's enough." Those words carry the weight of every broken bone and every lost night. Because in the end, his greatest role isn't Frank Martin, Deckard Shaw, or Chev Chelios. It's being a father, a husband, and a survivor. The tragedy of Jason Statham is not that he fell. It's that he kept standing when no one would have blamed him for sitting down. His silence, his stillness, his refusal to show weakness have made him timeless, but also alone in ways most people will never understand. At 58, He lives not for applause, but for the moments when no one's watching. The quiet breakfasts with his children, the sound of laughter echoing through his home, the softness of normal life he once thought he'd never have. Yet even in that peace, the ghosts remain, the friends gone too soon, the pain that never healed, the memories that never left. And maybe that's the truth about heroes. They aren't men without fear or flaw. They are men who endure both and keep moving anyway. Jason Statham endured. He survived the fall, the fame and the silence after applause. And though his body weakens, his spirit remains unbreakable. He once looked out over the ocean near his home and said quietly, "Everything I am came from trying not to drown." That's Jason Statham, the man who fought the world with his bare hands and won, but who now finds the hardest battle is simply learning to rest. In the end, his story is both triumph and tragedy, a reminder that strength is beautiful, but it is never free. When the lights fade, when the noise stops, when the body that defied gravity finally gives in, what remains is a man who gave everything he had to the idea of resilience. And in that, there's something heartbreakingly human. Jason Statham's life is proof that even steel rusts, that even the strongest among us carry invisible wounds. But he also proves that pain, endured with grace, becomes legacy. That is his gift. That is his curse. Because when history remembers him, it won't just remember the fights, the cars, or the explosions. It will remember the quiet stare of a man who learned that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about rebuilding yourself after you do. And so, as time moves on and his roles grow fewer, his legend grows deeper. Jason Statham, the diver who never made the Olympics, the hustler who became a star, the warrior who became a father, stands today as a symbol of endurance itself. His tragedy is not one of defeat, but of devotion. Devotion to the craft, to discipline, to the silent promise he made to himself long ago. Never stop moving. And maybe that's why his story will never truly end. Because somewhere, behind the fame and the fight scenes, there's still that boy from Shirebrook, standing at the edge of the pool, staring into the deep, taking one last breath before the dive, knowing that even if it hurts, he'll jump anyway. And yet, even with everything he's endured, there's a haunting poetry in the way Jason Statham carries himself today. He walks with purpose, but not the kind born of ambition. It's the stride of a man who's seen too much to run anymore. Those close to him say he's grown quieter over the years. The fire's still there, but it burns differently now. Not in his fists, but in his eyes. His life has become a meditation on restraint, on knowing when to hold back, when to let go. In interviews, when asked about success, he no longer talks about box office numbers or fame. He talks about time, how little of it there is, and how fragile it feels once you realize it can't be bought back. He's known loss in many forms. Loss of friends, of youth, of the version of himself he once thought he'd be. He's not bitter about it. He's realistic. "You spend your whole life chasing something," he once said quietly. "Then one day you realize you already had it before the chase began." For Jason, that something was simplicity. The streets of his youth, the sound of his father's laughter, the feel of cold air before a dive. Moments that felt meaningless then but now glow with nostalgia. It's why he's stepped back from the spotlight. He no longer needs to prove that he's tough. The world already knows. Now, what matters is being present, really present, in the lives of those who love him, even if the ghosts still follow. He has begun mentoring younger actors and stunt performers, teaching them not just about discipline, but about humility. On set, he's known for helping the stunt team rather than commanding them. He's often the first to arrive, last to leave, sweeping the training mat after everyone's gone. Some say it's habit, others say it's penance. For every friend lost, every risk taken, every wound earned in the name of entertainment. For Jason, it's a small way to give back to the industry that gave him purpose, and to protect those who are still naive enough to think pain is glamour. Those around him notice how he watches over the stunt crews like a guardian now. Every time someone jumps from a height or crashes a car, his eyes never leave them until they're safe. "I've seen what can happen when it goes wrong," he told one young actor who wanted to impress him by doing a dangerous take. "Trust me, there's no glory in getting hurt for real." That's not fear speaking, but wisdom, the kind that only comes from losing too many brothers in arms. There's a photo he keeps in his home gym, an old faded shot of him mid-dive, arms tucked, legs extended, a perfect line cutting through the air. He was 19 then, all muscle and momentum, chasing gold. Today, that photo isn't a reminder of failure, it's a reminder of faith. Every day, he glances at it before training, not because he wants to relive the past, but because it reminds him of who he was before the noise, before the fame, the pain, the expectation. It keeps him honest. Rosie says that despite the stoicism, Jason is more emotional now than ever. He cries during films, laughs louder with his children, apologizes faster when he's wrong. For a man who built a career on control, learning to soften has been his greatest victory. And maybe that's what life has been trying to teach him all along. That strength isn't the absence of emotion, it's the courage to feel it. He no longer hides behind the mask of invincibility. When he hugs his son, he holds on a little longer. When he looks at his wife, his expression lingers in quiet gratitude. These are the moments that no film could ever capture, because they belong to the man, not the myth. Still, sometimes, late at night, when the world is asleep, he goes outside and sits under the stars. It's a habit from his diving days, staring into the sky, finding calm in vastness. Out there, he doesn't think about fame or fortune. He thinks about balance, about the boy who dreamed of making it out, and the man who finally learned that making it just means coming home to yourself. The air is cool, his breath steady, and for a moment, he isn't Jason Statham, the movie star. He's Jason, son of Barry and Eileen, husband, father, survivor. And in that stillness, the tragedy doesn't feel so tragic anymore. It feels earned. His fans may never know this side of him, and maybe that's how he wants it. He's never sought pity, never asked for praise. He prefers his legacy to be written not in headlines, but in the silence after the credits roll, in the respect of those who watched him and felt something real. Because for all the explosions and fight scenes, Jason's greatest art has always been honesty. The way he moves, the way he fights, the way he exists, unfiltered, unpolished, unapologetic. That's the truth of Jason Statham. And when the day finally comes that he steps away from the screen for good, he won't need a farewell tour or a dramatic goodbye. He'll simply disappear into the quiet life he's built. Maybe return to the water that started it all. You can almost picture it. The sun setting, the world fading, Jason standing by the edge of a pool, older now but still strong, taking one last breath before diving in, the ripples fading behind him like the echo of a life fully lived. Because in the end, that's who he's always been, a man who dives into the unknown, fearless of what waits below. And though his body bears the weight of every fall, his spirit remains untamed, still chasing the surface, still fighting to rise. That's the legacy of Jason Statham, not the fame, not the fortune, but the fight, the beautiful, heartbreaking, endless fight to stay true, even when it hurts. And maybe, when the final curtain falls, the world will finally see the truth, that behind every hero's legend, there's a man who learned that the hardest battle of all is learning how to stop fighting and simply live.